Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Minasan konbanwa. A very good evening to everyone. My name is Meenu S, and I am a storyteller based out of Bengaluru, India. So today, the story that I'm going to be sharing with you is a Japanese fairy tale that is called Neko wo Igaita Shonen. So it was originally translated to English by Lefcadio Hearn in his book Gleanings from Buddha Fields. So this is my retelling of the same. Back, far back in the mists of time, in a small village, there lived a farmer and his wife. Now this farmer and his wife had many children, boys as well as girls. And the youngest among them was their son, who was called Joji. Joji obviously grew up with many brothers and sisters. And all his brothers and sisters helped their parents both in the fields as well as, sharing the household chores and all that. Except Joji. Joji was small and weak. He spent hours and hours together doing just one thing. And that was to draw. And what did he draw? He drew just one thing. Neko. That is cats in Japanese. Cats, cats, and more cats. Short cats, fat cats, long cats, small cats. But all he drew were only cats. Now one day, Joji's father noticed this and he walked up to Joji and said, "Joji, Taishi, you have to stop drawing those cats. Then how will you become a farmer?" He literally shouted at his youngest son. "Gomen nasai, Oto-san. I'm sorry, father, but I'll try," said Joji. And yes, he definitely tried. But whenever he saw a farm cat walk by that side, he forgot all about farming and he went back to drawing and drawing cats, cats, and more cats. Now both his parents got worried. Joji's father walked up to his mother and said, "Oh, Tsumo, our son Joji is not going to become a farmer," he said. "But, Otto, why don't you take him to the village temple? He could become a priest," she said. So the next day morning, Joji's father took Joji along with him to the village temple and handed him over to the priest. The priest gladly took him and he gave him lessons in both writing and reading. Now Joji even had his own box of writing tools. He had his brush, he had his ink stick, he had his stone. And the best part that delighted Joji, the stone that had a hollow, and he would fill that with water. He would dip the ink stick in that water and rub against the stone again and again and again. And that hollow was filled with ink for his brush. While all the students of the priest spent their time working really hard to improve their reading and writing, well, Joji, yes, spent a lot of time, of course, and did a lot of hard work, but for drawing all the time. And what did he draw? Neko. Cats, cats, and more cats. Short cats, big cats, large cats, furry cats, you name it. There were cats all the time. The priest noticed this and he walked up to Joji and said, "Joji, you have to stop drawing those cats. Then how will you become a priest? He said. Gomen nasai okyaku-sama. I am sorry, sir, but I will try. And yes, he did try sincerely. But then, when he saw a temple cat walk by that side, he forgot all about reading and writing, and he went back to drawing. Cats and more cats. Now it became even more. He went on to draw on the folding screens, on the rice paper panels in the temple, on the walls. And there were cats, drawings of cats everywhere in the temple. When the priest noticed this, he knew that this has to be stopped. This was going out of control. And so he called Joji to come to his room the next day morning. And the next day morning, Joji walked into the priest's room. Ohayo gozaimasu, he greeted the priest. Ohayo, Joji, sit down. Joji, I'm afraid I have to ask you to leave. You have to, you cannot become a priest anymore. But you can make a fine artist. So go into the world and make art. But, Okyaku-sama, are you sure? Yes, my child, I am serious. But I have one advice for you. Listen. Avoid large places at night and always stick to the small. Remember, avoid large places at night and always stick to the small. He finished. Now Joji had no clue. What was this priest telling him? He did not understand anything at all. But then he just couldn't ask the priest either, because he thought that would be disrespectful. And so he just nodded his head. But now, where can he go? He was afraid to go back home to his parents. But just then he remembered there was another temple in the next village. And so he quickly packed his bags and he decided to go and stay in that temple. He walked and he walked and he walked until he reached the nearby village. But by the time he reached the village temple, it was quite dark. The sun had set in. He walked up the stairs of the temple, and there he noticed it was completely dark too. He knocked at the door, but there was no answer. He pushed open the heavy door and looked inside. It was totally dark, surprisingly. And there he found a small lamp. He took that lamp, lit it, and then placed it by the side of the road, by the side of the door, as it lit up the entire room. And what he saw there inside the temple, he was delighted. There were empty folded screens. There were rice paper panels that were empty too. Wow! He immediately took his paintbrush, his paint, his ink stick, his stone. He made the ink. And then he began drawing just one thing. Oh yes, you got it right. Neko. Cats. Short cats, fat cats, long cats, you name it. There were cats and cats everywhere around. For hours he was drawing those cats. And finally, there was one large screen that was left. And in that screen, he decided to draw one gigantic cat. And yes, he drew that one gigantic cat. And he looked at it in awe. Wow! That cat was not only big, it was bold and beautiful, the most beautiful one, the best one that Joji had ever drawn. He was exhausted. After all that walking and hours of drawing the cats, he was tired. It was dark, it was late in the night, and he wanted to take rest. Just then, he remembered what the priest had said. The words flashed in his mind. Avoid large places at dark. Always stick to the small. And so Joji looked around, and there, right in at the corner of the room, he found a small closet. He walked up to that closet. He opened the door, and he sat inside. It was perfect. He felt warm and cozy. He settled in, and within no time, he just fell asleep. And then, late in the night, he was jolted awake by sounds, terrible sounds that he had never ever heard in his life ever before. Wow! 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 There were sounds of pain, there were sounds of struggle, there were sounds of crying. Joji was trembling. He was shaking in fear. He just wished that whatever that monster was would just not know and come in search of him there, who inside that closet. The sounds continued, and then finally, thud! And then everything went silent. Silence prevailed, just like this. Joji was still shaking inside that closet. He never knew when he fell asleep after that. But he woke up only the next day morning, when the rays of the sun that penetrated through the gaps in the closet fell upon him. He got down from the closet. He remembered those terrible sounds that he had heard the previous night. He walked out cautiously, looking all around, and then what he saw right in the middle of the room shocked him. There, what he saw was a huge, monstrous rat, fallen dead, motionless. It lay there, as if it had been smashed onto the floor. He didn't know who had done that. He looked around, but there were no one around. And then, slowly, his eyes fell on that gigantic cat. Did I not draw that cat facing to the left and the tail to the right? Oh yes, of course, he had done that. Now it was as if the cat had come out and then gone back to the screen and now facing the opposite side, the face to the right and the tail to the right. Yes, the cat says it is, he exclaimed, and then he brought his hands together and bowed to the cat. Arigato ripana neko, arigata nipano neko. Thank you, honorable cat. Thank you so much. You have saved my life, he said. And then he smiled, looked at the cat again, and told aloud, from now on, no one can stop me from drawing cats, he said with renewed energy, with renewed confidence. So after that, the news had spread to the entire village, and they of course knew the killer of that monstrous rat. The temple priest returned, and yes, he allowed Joji to stay there in that temple for as long as he wanted. And Joji did not become a priest. Neither did he become a farmer. But yes, he did become an artist, a great artist, an artist who was honored through the country, an artist who drew just one thing: neko, cats. Well, they say that some of his drawings are shown to the travelers who come to Japan. But as far as Joji was concerned, he was always grateful to his temple priest and remembered that one important conversation that he had with the priest. Arigato gozaimashita. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So how long have you been living with that story?
I should say, I should say probably for about 2 weeks.
Oh, it's a new one for you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling it for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Anybody, any thoughts?
What was the meaning of the first phrase that you used in Japanese, Meenu?
Yeah. So that's basically a Nichiren Buddhist chant, Nichiren Buddhism chant. So this mantra is basically central to Nichiren Buddhism, which is a form of Mahayana Buddhism, which is followed in Japan. So that is basically we can say a vow or an expression of determination, or we can even say a pledge to oneself to never yield to difficulties and to win over one's suffering. So I felt it is very apt here to this story, especially for two reasons. One, because as I had already mentioned, it is a Nichiren Buddhism chant. So this Nichiren Buddhism basically combines the teachings of Buddha as well as the wisdom of a Japanese teacher by the name Nichiren Daishonin. And the other reason is, for this story, I felt the protagonist, the boy, Joji, drawing is something that came so naturally to him. But the parents coming and wanting him to become a farmer or wanting him to become a priest, those were some things which he actually did not want to become. So according to me, that's kind of a difficulty or a suffering. He was basically suffering. He was not able to say a no to them. He did not know whether drawing is something that gave him that ultimate happiness. So he was kind of in that state which was actually suffering for him. But then eventually he was able to overcome that. He was able to realize that drawing cats is something that will give him the ultimate happiness, that ultimate bliss, the enlightenment. So that's kind of an enlightenment for him, which is what this chant is all about. Overcome your sufferings and then reach your ultimate bliss. So I thought this is just apt for this story. Yeah.
Yes, and I got the message I got was, just develop your unique talent or interest, and things will work out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt almost the same, that he was already a priest, he was so much into meditation for that drawing. He was already in love with that drawing of Nico, the cats. And so, everywhere he drew that, and finally they came to rescue him. So I suppose in form of God, he kept on meditating, and then the gigantic cat actually came out
and saved Yeah, true, very true.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
It reminds me of an Indian story about Shiva. There was a barber who would meditate on Shiva every morning, but for that reason he would be late for his appointments. The barber, and one of his appointments was that he had to go and shave the king every morning, and he was always late. So the king said, "If you're late one more time, off with your head." The next morning, the barber woke up and he was meditating about Shiva, Shiva in the forest, Shiva in the beautiful nature, and Shiva here, Shiva there. And he totally forgot about time. And the clock struck. It was time for him to come and shave the king, and he was still 2 kilometers away. So it looked like it was going to be a disaster for him. But at the appointed moment, even though the barber was 2 kilometers away in his home, someone who looked just like him appeared at court and came and shaved the king and left. It was Shiva. And so Shiva saved his devotee by impersonating him. And of course, there's so many stories about sculptors who create a sculpture and then the sculpture comes to life, right? Pinocchio, and that ancient Greek sculptor who sculpted a beautiful woman and then she came to life. What is her name?
Pygmalion was
Pygmalion, yes. And isn't there a story about a young boy who paints an ocean and a ship, and he warns everyone this can be a dangerous picture.
The boy who could speak to, who could understand bird language or something.
Maybe, but then somebody that picture comes to life, and somebody gets in that ship, and it turns out to be a stormy sea, and the ship capsizes. So it turns out it was a very dangerous.
Actually, Eric, it's the story of the boy with the magic paint.
Magic paint
Yes,
brush, exactly.
yes.
Lamyang's paintbrush, Chinese folktale.
Okay.
Lamyang's paintbrush.
Yes, Chinese folktale. Yes.
Yeah. The boy's name is Lamyang.
All right, so I think we're all encouraged that we should continue whatever we're doing. Some people might say he was autistic, right? That he would only paint cats, but who cares about that kind of medical diagnosis? Beverly, what were you going to say?
Well, good morning. I just got in, as you told me, 9 o'clock, and I'm here. I don't know if my sound's okay.
Your sound is fine.
And are you going to be highlighting the person talking?
Well, we're just having a discussion about the first story, and we'll finish in a couple of minutes, and then you'll tell your you'll tell your story.
I did not know where you were going or coming from.
That's fine. That's fine. You'll we're very informal here. You'll pick it up.
Okay, thank you. And after I'm done, I'll put in the chat something for you. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anyone else? Any thoughts about the story or the way it was told? It was told very beautifully. You were very involved in it. You obviously love the story very much.
Thank you, Eric. Coming from you is a great compliment. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll go on to the next story, and we'll just let the recording go because I don't want to hear that lady every time. But as I say, if we put it online, we can direct people, with a certain web page address. It will start at a certain moment, so each person can see it starting at a different moment. So Beverly, where are you?
I'm on the area of Albany, New York, which is the state capital, about 3 hours north of New York City, 3 hours from Boston, and 3 hours from Montreal.
Very good. And so you're gonna, well, why don't you just introduce yourself and introduce
Okay,
yourself further and the story, and please tell us a story. We don't highlight people, we don't spotlight them. Everyone
Okay.
is on their own to whether they want to see the gallery view or whether they want to see if they want to pin people. Well, I pinned the storyteller. So did everyone see the pinned version during the telling?
I'm
Yeah.
seeing you, you with the people in boxes above you.
Ah,
Your
well, I
spotlight.
think I will pin the storyteller for the sake of the
Okay.
recording, but I think everyone has the ability to override that. If you go
I
to
don't-
the
yeah.
if you go to the upper right corner where it says view and those 9 little white spots, you can override the pin and you can choose gallery view if you want.
Gallery will have me spotlighted.
No, gallery, everybody, see now we're all in gallery view.
Okay, speaker view would be seeing me, right?
Speaker view, you can choose speaker view, but the problem with speaker view, if anyone coughs or touches their computer, it will go to them. So
Okay,
it's a
I'll
little
just keep it the way
distracting.
it is. I'm going to keep
Yes.
it the way it is.
Well, for you, the storyteller, who do you want to see as you're telling? Do you want to see
I'm just going
yourself?
to go, I'm
or
going
do
to
you-
look at the green light and just talk into it. So I know.
Oh,
I'm
into the
sending-
camera. Good. That's the
Yeah,
best.
that's what I do.
Great.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
I'm ready.
So go right ahead, please.
My name is Beverly Schwartz, and in 1985, I was teaching in Troy, New York, next to Rensselaer Polytech Institute. The state of New York announced that all teachers on 3rd or 4th grade level in the whole entire state was now going to have to take a state test to see how well they were taught in 3rd grade or 4th grade science. My problem was I only read and discussed things. I never did hands-on science, and I didn't know what to do. So I thought outside the box, went to the college next door, and formed a collaborative partnership of developing a hands-on science program for my class. Well, it became so popular because all the other teachers had to do the same thing, give the tests. They started joining the program, and eventually it went throughout my district. A couple years later, my principal and superintendent called me to a meeting. I said, oh my goodness, what did I do wrong? You know? Well, they said that they thought I should apply for the job of being the first teacher in space, and they would back me up, and they gave me the application. Well, I brought it home and it sat there and it sat there, and I didn't know why I didn't want to do it. And then I figured it out. I did not want to die in space. So I didn't do it. In 1990, my program had really grown throughout the community, and the state came in to say, we'd like to see your program. And they did. And then they sent me an application to apply for the 1990 Christy McAuliffe Award. Christy McAuliffe had been the first teacher selected to go up into space. She had 2 kids. She had a husband, a family, lots of people who loved her. She still had the courage to fill out the application, and she did it, and she got selected. Then when I won the 1990 award, it was in her honor, and they flew me down to Florida to the Kennedy Space Center, where they were going to have an awards program. Well, when I went, an astronaut who had also gone to RPI as a student met me and said, I have a favor to ask you, Bev. Grace, Christy McAuliffe's mother, is here for the very first time since her daughter's rocket ship launched and blasted off, but unfortunately exploded and killed all those on board. I'm going to take you and her after lunch on a tour of the backspace of the Kennedy Space Center, where nobody gets a tour for. So after lunch, we were escorted to the van. We had gotten to know each other at lunch a little and talked about what we were doing now. She wanted to know about my project, and off we went. Now, I saw a lot of things and we did a lot of laughing. 2 things that I will tell you about quickly is that first rocket ships were had to be tested to be blasted off. Well, they were in an igloo, a half circle building, and they would blast off the rocket ships from there. So when a rocket ship goes off, it blasts off and fuel comes down, and it's acidic and it'll burn your skin. So you have to get out of that area. And today, when they do it in 15 minutes, but in those days, they didn't know how long it was going to take. So they locked the doors after they blasted off the rocket ships for 48 hours, and they had to stay there. Now, the first rocket ship was blasted off and doors were locked, couldn't get in, couldn't get out. Well, someone had to go to the bathroom. Well, guess what? The engineers designed the bathrooms outside the igloo before you went in. They couldn't get out to go to the bathrooms, so they had to make do. That was the engineering people who thought of that. The final funny story I will tell you is there was Squirrel Man. What was Squirrel Man? Well, in those days, they had extension cords, and they would have it from the igloo to the rocket ship. And they start blasting off 30, 29, 28. But there was a man that had to look out to see if any of the squirrels loosened up any of the extension cords from the rocket ship to the building. And if they saw a squirrel that had maybe disconnected one of the plug-in extension cords, squirrel! And the man would run out, plug everything in, run back and get it before zero came when they were blasting it off. Finally, the astronaut said, we have one more thing to do. We're going to be able to stand on the launch pad where your daughter's rocket ship blasted off. I saw Grace's face kind of freeze, and she put her hands around her waist. She didn't say a word. She was very quiet. We drove up to the launch pad, and it's a big cement football field with a path. It leads right up to the launch pad, and we walked slowly up. We stood there and we all looked up. When I looked up, I said, this would have been the last thing I saw if I had been the teacher before we blasted off and died. I wonder what was going through all the astronauts in her mind when this happened. I looked over at Christy McAuliffe's mother, Grace. Tears were starting to come down her eyes, and she's trying to wipe them to hide it. You could see that she was looking up there. And what was she thinking? I said to Grace, Grace, would you like a few minutes up here alone? All she could do was nod. She couldn't even talk at that point. The astronaut and I walked down to the bottom of the base, and I turned around and I saw this woman talking to her daughter, moving her hands, wiping their tears away, and holding her stomach. She was up there for a good 20 minutes alone. Finally, I saw her turn and come slowly walking down the path. But as she started walking towards me, her eyes were staring right into my eyes. She walked right up to me and gave me this biggest mother hug you could ever imagine. As she pulled herself away, I took her hand. She had finally said goodbye to her daughter, and we walked away in silence towards the van. It was a moment in time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So you, in a way, you helped her, Christy McAuliffe's mother, say goodbye to her daughter.
Yes, I think that was, she had never really been back to the Kennedy Space Center since her daughter's had been killed with the explosion. And this was her very first time and opportunity. And that's why they allowed her to stand on the launch pad, and they wanted someone else besides an astronaut with her, maybe another woman, to comfort her because of the loss of her daughter. So I was very honored to have been selected and help her say goodbye to her daughter.
So for those of you who don't know, in India, this was when did it happen?
Around 1985 and 86, around
Yes,
there.
yes. It was a very celebrated moment where were they going up to dock with the space station, or they were just going into outer space?
No, I don't think there was a space station yet, but they were just going out in space and
Mhm.
they were going to do
And it
experiments.
was one of the first times a civilian was going, and she was a school teacher.
Right. She
So
was
it was all connected with school children and schools all across the country. And
right.
everyone was watching it, and it was a big educational moment. And the rocket went up, and after a few seconds, it just exploded. And we saw them. We saw
Right.
them.
The
We knew they
goal,
were.
the goal that they picked her for was not just to go up, but she had created a hands-on science program of science. And she never got to share it and disseminate it across the US or the world. My program was almost exactly like hers in a lot of ways. So they were hoping that I would also, after developing my program and being awarded, to have mine disseminated. Unfortunately, hers couldn't be, but mine could be. And it was so similar, they felt that I had a lot in common with her. And after that, NBC did a special on me, Things That Work, and did a national story on the science collaboration program. And it started getting disseminated also across the US. And I called it STEM, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. No one in 1985, when I started the program, even knew what those letters meant. So I was the first person to use STEM and create a STEM program in the world. And now everybody knows.
Yes, now it's very well known.
Very few people know I'm the one who started it.
So you developed curriculum.
Yes, how to do collaborative projects with universities, local professional people, parents, and businesses. And we involved it all into helping the children with hands-on science in the areas that they had to be taught according to New York State. Everything was correlated to New York State.
And are you still doing this work?
I retired in 2007. I formed a 501c3 or a business to disseminate the program. And we did it for 20 years. And then STEM was really taking off the program, doing different other varieties of it. So I kind of took up storytelling instead. And I tell this and many other stories of some of the exciting things that happened to me while I ran the program. And I have other personal stories as well. Renu's heard many of them. So it's interesting how that all developed, the whole STEM program. But mine was a little special because I had all these people coming into the classroom, experts in physics and weather and any kind of science area. And they would come in. And what we did was we first demonstrated, and we were able to get equipment that schools couldn't afford to come into schools from the businesses and the colleges. And then we broke up always into groups to do hands-on science relating to what we were, shown. And then the kids, we did a process where they had to write a thank you note, so they had good writing skills. We had books on the subject taken from libraries they could read on their level. And they also wrote about what happened. And at the end of the unit, let's say it was all about electricity and magnetism, every time they left, they had to write a composition of what they learned, and they had to put a book together and read it to their parents to let them know what they learned in school. So the parents got involved. So it really involved the whole community. It took a village to raise a child. It took our community to educate in science, technology, engineering, and math. And my kids in 1985, RPI had the very first computer lab. And they took us because on the lunch hour, we walked next door, and third graders in 1985 for 1 hour, 3 times a week, typed their stories on a computer. And when I said, we're going to a computer lab, I said to them, what's a computer lab, by the way? What's a computer? We didn't even know what they were. So these kids were way ahead of the time of most kids in the US, going also to RPI and seeing their demonstrators demonstrate things too. And we couldn't have done it. No money could have afforded, a school could have afforded doing something like this. So we brought the outside into the classroom, and they even, a lot of them would pay us to drive to their businesses, they have a bus to see what they did. And it was also for careers. These kids were inner city kids, and some of them even went to college because of this program and became, people in the STEM area because they were exposed to it when they were little. And then they knew that if they wanted it this bad, they could go to college if they studied hard enough.
Mhm. So you have been very deeply involved with this work.
Yes.
It's a major part of your identity.
Yes, it is. And most people who've met me after 2007 don't realize everything I did. I don't talk about it a lot anymore, So yeah, it's one of my legacies that I did in my life.
Anybody, any comments, questions?
Yeah, Beverly, thank you for your pioneering work on STEM. And STEM is a big deal in India. Today we have STEM coaching classes almost in every street in India. And to think that I'm actually speaking to someone who's actually pioneered it, I think that's a great honor. Your story was very moving, very touching, and I especially like the funny bits that you added in between, and with a complete with your deadpan expression. I mean, it's just like engineers to build a complete aerodrome that's going to be locked from outside and have the bathroom from the outside, right? I mean, it's like
For 48 hours.
I couldn't stop laughing when you said that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I like to add humor in all my stories, no matter how sad they are, So thank you. I appreciate that. I do. We even had the STEM.org website and email and everything. I gave it up after we shut down the company, but I should have kept it, And NBC did a nice job. Ann Curry came up for a week to film it, and Jane Pauley's the one who overrode the story nationally talking. So that was an experience also.
All right, well, I'll put you, did you give me a website?
I don't have my own website. I've developed a Facebook now. I have to learn to put things on it. I'm really new in technology for today.
Okay, well, when you have a Facebook address or something, send it to me and I'll put it online there so people can
Yes.
contact you.
And I hope that you'll have me back again sometime. I have some really other good stories that Renu can testify to, just as good
Sure.
or better than this.
Yes, well, you're part of the community,
Yes,
Thank you.
and I found my cat. She came home. My cat got out twice this week, and
Okay, good.
she came home 4 in the morning. So that was a big.
Oh,
relief.
yes, you
Yeah.
mentioned.
Right, and I had a car accident this past weekend. A lot of things happen, and I'll go today and find out if they're going to take X-rays how broken it is.
Oh.
So I'm limping around right now in a splint.
But your
So,
cat came home. The cat was outside for a few days?
yeah, she escaped last week, and she came back 2 days later. And I was checking every hour on the hour. I left my garage door open, and then this morning I was getting up on the hour, and about 4 this morning I thought I heard something, and sure enough she was at my back door meowing to get in. She comes in like, well, it's about time you let me back in. Go ahead and eats, and then she joins me back in bed again like nothing happened at all. Meanwhile, all week long I'm like, oh my God, she's never going to come back, So I think I've been very blessed this week with the miracle of my cat also. Some animals to some people are like children, and they are my children.
That's a lucky cat.
Yeah, and won the lottery getting me. He gets a pedicure every 4 weeks at the vet, and they get, they're pampered, they like, I do what they want. I'm their servant.
Thank you.
Renu, what did you think of the story? Renu, did she leave?
Yes, Beth. I loved
Hi.
it. I've heard it once before, and I think I was equally blown away this time too. And like you said, you have such wonderful stories, and you must come back again.
Yes, and I know you do. Whenever you're ready, give me a date for yours.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you. I'm ready to come.
Yes.
I have been looking forward to doing this, like, since I heard from both of you. It was like, wow, I really wanted to do something in India, and I feel so grateful, and thank you all so very, very much for allowing me to come and do this. I really appreciated it.
Well, thank you. And Renu, you're the next storyteller. So
I have one question.
why don't you begin by telling us about the series that you host? I'm sorry, Beverly, were you saying something else?
Yes, well, I get a copy of of the.
Yes, well, we're recording this just as one recording, and
Oh, okay.
unless
Thank you.
anyone objects, I'll put it on YouTube with a link to where you began, where Renu began, where each person began.
Thank you.
And I can send you the entire file too, but it's going to be a big file.
Oh,
because-
whatever you want to do is fine. Just send me the link to your YouTube and then I'll be fine.
Very good. Okay, Renu, tell us about your series and everything else.
Yes, Eric. I've just taken off my glasses because I think there's a lot of glare, and I prefer to do it without my glasses. So I have this festival that goes on every alternate month. I started off in November last year, and I had another one in January, then in March. I was supposed to have one in May, but I had to cancel it because many of the storytellers fell ill, and one of my very close storyteller passed away in May. So I was really not in the mood to continue with the festival. So that was the one I'd invited Beverly actually, but then I told her that I've cancelled it. So the next one will probably happen in July, hopefully, if things get better. And then after that, of course, September, which also coincides with the Kathavriksha's 3rd anniversary. So I'm hoping to do something special at that time. And I have been inviting people. I have been attending various story swaps in the US, and I'm beginning to make lots of friends. It's been great fun. Like Bev says, it's very nice to go out and share stories and listen to stories. And this pandemic, in that sense, has been a real blessing. I've made such wonderful friends all over, mostly in the US, in the California side, because that time sort of suits us, because 7 p.m. their time is about 7:30 a.m. for us, which is good for me. Anything from the East Coast is difficult because there's only 9.5 hours difference. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to tell all of you. So in any case, if any one of you wants to share a story here, please let me know. Eric has my email ID. He has all the details. You can get in touch with him. And today I'll be sharing my story. I'm Renu. I'm based in Chennai, in the south of India. And this story that I'm going to share with you this evening is called Different Shades of Love. This is a story I've written myself, and this is the second time I'm sharing it. So here goes. आप जिनके करीब होते हैं वो बड़े खुश नसीब होते हैं आप जिनके करीब होते हैं. Vinita had just got into the cab and she was settling down when the driver had put on the music and the song started to play. It immediately took her back to that evening 8 years ago when Gautam had sung this very same song to her the first time they had met. The scene was so clear in her mind. She was in her best friend Usha's apartment. It was Usha's 30th birthday. The tiny apartment is filled with people. Usha was so popular. Tired of the crowd, Vinita had gone, poured herself a vodka tonic, walked out onto the balcony. She was gazing out at the moon, enjoying that cool breeze, when all of a sudden, she heard footsteps. She didn't bother to turn around and look. And then she heard the song. That's when she turned around and she saw this guy looking at her with a smile. That's one of my favorite ghazals, you know. And you have a lovely voice, she said. Thank you, thank you. I sang it for you. For me? Yeah. Anyone who's close to you is indeed very fortunate, he said, translating the lines of the song. Is this your favorite pickup line? She asked him. Not at all, not at all. I don't have any favorite pickup lines. In fact, I don't have any pickup lines. God promise. Okay, then I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you, he said. So how do you know Usha? She asked him. Usha and I studied architecture together. We've been friends since then. She's such a lovely person, you know. Don't tell me that. We've been childhood friends. We studied together from our kindergarten days. The only time we got separated was when she went to study architecture and I chose literature and art. So what do you do then? He asked. I write and illustrate children's books. Wow, that sounds interesting. I love my job, she replied. And then she looked at her watch. Oops, it's 8 o'clock. Time to eat. I'm going to go and grab some food. See you later, she said, and walked away. She could see Usha waving out wildly to her. So she walked across. Hey, Vinny, what were you chatting with Gautam, huh? Best person for you. Oh, whoosh, when are you going to stop matchmaking? Please, for heaven's sake, stop it. I'm perfectly capable of finding a man for myself. Just drop the topic, okay? But Vinny, Gautam is my best friend and you are my best friend. What a love. Ush, I told you, please stop. And so Usha had changed the subject. They had their dinner and then Vinita had said, Ush, I'm leaving. I need to get home. She had said her goodbyes and just as she reached the front door, it was open for her. She looked up and saw Gautam standing there. Can I drop you home? He asked. Depends on where you're going, she replied. I'm going wherever you're going, he had said. Ah, okay, then drop me. She had got into his car. Right through the time, through that long drive, they had chatted and chatted like they'd known each other for years. They had so many common friends, they had so many common interests. And by the time she got off the car, they'd exchanged telephone numbers. After that, they met as often as they could. Both of them traveled a lot. He on his various projects and she on her book signings and book signings. And then about a year later, they decided that they would get married. And Usha was absolutely delighted. I told you, she said. Oh, Usha, yes, you were right, agreed Vinita. It was a very simple ceremony. Her mother, his sister, were the only family members. Of course, a few close friends. Gautam moved into Vinita's flat because it was convenient. It was right there in the heart of the city. It was a good relationship. Everybody envied them. Perfect match. Perfect marriage, they all said. It was indeed a perfect match. Vinita was amazed. Gautam was such a fantastic cook. He did all the household chores so effortlessly. Both of them shared all the work around the house. In fact, one day she asked him, Gautam, how come you're so good at everything? Vinita, you didn't know my mother. My mom was a busy doctor. And so she told my sister and myself that we had to be enabled. And that's how I learned to cook and do all the housework. And believe me, when I went away to study in college, I was the only guy who could cook and keep this place clean. Everybody was so amazed by me. Wow, Gautam, I'm really lucky, she said. And so the days went on. They had parties, they had get-togethers, and every time people envied her. As everyone knows, especially in India, men hardly ever lift a finger to help around the house. 3 years later, Gautam was out of town. Vinita woke up one morning with pain in her pelvic area. It was so intense, she decided to see her gynecologist. And when she was lying there being examined, the doctor said, I think it's better I do an ultrasound. And so it was done. And then she turned to Vinita and said, Vinny, I'm really surprised. You're pregnant. What? How is that possible? Asked Vinny. She remembered that conversation she had with Gautam soon after they were married. She'd asked Gautam, Gautam, do you want babies? No, Vinny, I don't want any babies. I'm just not cut out to be a dad. What about you? I don't think I want any either. But in any case, even if I wanted children, I can't have them. Why? Because I have something called PCI, which is primary, some problem with my ovaries, something like that. I can't recall the exact terminology. And are you okay with that, Vinny? How can I miss something that I've never had? She said. It's something to celebrate? Asked Bob. Why not? Said Vinny. And they'd actually drunk a glass of wine celebrating the fact that they could never have children. And now this? How could she tell Gautam when he was so against having babies? She left the hospital feeling very confused. That very same evening, Gautam was coming back. And so she waited for him. She could hear the door opening. He walked in, looking more tired, and somehow something was very odd about his face. But before he could even open his mouth, she said, Gautam, I've got something to tell you. I have something to tell you too, Vinita, said Gautam. Please, Gautam, I think mine is more urgent. Okay, tell me then. Gautam, I'm pregnant. What? You are pregnant? How is that even possible? I know, I was shocked too, but I'm really confused. I don't know what to do. Well, I think you do know what you have to do. We don't really need this baby, do we, Vinita? Gautam, give me some time. I'm so confused. What if we want a baby? What if my mother wants to be a grandmother? What? You want to have a baby so that your mother can become a grandmother? What nonsense are you talking, Vinita? Gautam had never ever raised his voice even in anger. And this time too, he didn't. But he looked terrifying. Without a single word, he just turned and walked off to the bedroom. She heard the door shut silently after him. What do I do? What do I do? The days went by. Neither of them spoke a word. The house was only filled with silence. She had spoken to her mother. She spoke to Usha. But both of them had said the same thing. Vinny, please think about this. Gautam doesn't want babies. And you know you had agreed. And remember, a baby needs both parents. She was still confused. But one day, it was taken out of her hands. She suffered a miscarriage. And when she recovered in hospital, the doctor told her, Vinita, this time I can assure you, you can never ever have a baby. And she felt a flood of relief and then immediately followed by a sense of guilt. How can I feel happy when I've lost a baby? And she went home feeling very, very depressed. Gautam was very supportive. He held her for long hours while she wept and wept and wept. Usha was there, her mother was there. But somehow this feeling of guilt didn't leave her. It took her many, many months. She went for therapy regularly. She lost all interest in her work. But as they say, time heals. And over a period of a year and a half, she was slowly coming back to normalcy. And that's when Gautam dropped the bombshell. One evening, they were sitting and watching TV. She was actually reading a book and every now and then looking up. And Gautam suddenly turned to her and said, Vinita, I have something to tell you. What's it, Gautam? Listen, Vinita, this is something really, really serious. What? What can be so serious? I want a divorce, Vinita. What? What do you mean a divorce? Is it because of baby? No, it's nothing to do with that. Remember that day when I came back home from that trip? I wanted to tell you this, but all this baby thing happened and I couldn't open my mouth, but now I think it's the right time. What do you mean, Gautam? This is the right time? Why do you want a divorce? I thought you loved me. I thought you were happy. Yes, I do love you, Vinita, but not in the way you deserve or want. I need to get away, Vinita. Why don't you understand that? I need to get away. I don't understand myself. I just feel boxed in. I need to get away. Please, Vinita, let me go. Gautam, you can go. Go for a short while. Take a break. I'll wait for you. Oh, Vinita, you don't understand. I don't want a break. I want to get away altogether. Gautam, why are you doing this? Gautam, why are you doing this? Vinita, please don't start crying now. I'm very sorry I'm hurting you. But please say you'll give me a divorce. What makes you think that I would want to hold on to somebody who doesn't want me anymore, Gautam? Leave right away. And so Gautam had just left. And that's when she broke down and started to cry. She had called up Usha. All Usha said was, I'm coming, Vinny. And there she was. She stayed with her for days on end, comforting her, holding her, as Vinita wept and wept and wept as though there was a whole well of tears inside her body. Her mother came and stayed with her. But it took her so many days and months. Finally, she went back to therapy. Finally, she threw herself into her work. She brought out book after book after book. Publishers were very happy. But for Vinita, it was a kind of therapy. And then one morning, after she was coming back from a job, she had taken up sports, she had taken up marathon, she had taken up yoga. And as she was coming back from her morning job, she saw this tiny little puppy sitting on the roadside, crying for its mother. But looking around, she couldn't see any dog or other puppies. So she picked up the puppy and brought it home. And the mother said, what are you going to do with this puppy, Vinny? This apartment is too small for a dog. I know, Ma, but how could I have left that puppy on that road? I think I want to keep it. And that's when they decided they would move out of that apartment to the suburbs. They looked and found a nice house. The garden was in a bit of a mess. But now the three of them had found a nice home, away from that apartment, away from the memories of Gautam. Her mother and Vinita spent time, hours after hours in the garden, growing trees and plants. And now it looked so beautiful. Three of them were so happy. And almost 3 years later, she received a long letter from Gautam. And after she had finished reading it, she wept and wept for both of them. Because finally she understood why Gautam had to leave. And soon after that, she decided that she would adopt a baby. When she approached the orphanage, they said, Madam, it's not that easy. You'll have to wait for at least a year or two. Therefore, she was very surprised when within 2 weeks of applying, she received a call. Madam, there's a baby. Are you interested? Of course, she had said, and rushed there. Where's the baby? Where's the baby? And the lady there had taken her to cradle. There was a little newborn baby, a little girl. And Vinita said, yes, I want this baby. But how come? I thought it would take me at least a year or two. Madam, this baby may not live long. What? Yeah, she's got a hole in the heart and she needs an immediate surgery. Are you willing to take the chance, madam? Yes, yes, said Vinita. And she took that little baby straight to the hospital. And after that, there were days and months of between the hospital and home, home and hospital. And finally, that little girl came home. And that was the happiest day in Vinita's life. Now that little girl was 3 years old, and the four of them were so happy. One evening when Vinita came home after a trip, she saw a card on the table. It was an invitation card. And when she opened it, she saw, Gautam and Abhi invite you to celebrate their love. She looked at the card. And it was for that evening. And then she thought to herself, why not? She gave her little girl her dinner. She had her dinner too because that place was far away. She had called for the cab. And as they had started out, the song had played. And now all this was already in the past. She was so lost in her thoughts. The cab driver said, Madam, madam. Yes, what's the problem? Are we stuck somewhere? No, madam. You've reached the house. Oh, okay. How much is it? 375, madam. Here. She gave him a 500 rupee note. Got out of the car, adjusted her sari, felt her hair. The door was open. Light was streaming out. She could hear the sounds of conversation and laughter. For a minute, she hesitated. Then she walked in. And there was Gautam. He had his back towards her, but she could always recognize him. And just as she was looking at him, he turned around and said, Binny, you've come. He rushed across to her and held her by her hands. I'm so happy, Binny. I'm happy too. He took her to that small group he had been standing with. He put his arm around the man who had been standing next to him and said, Vinny, meet Abhi. Abhi, meet Vinny. Nice meeting you, Vinny, said Abhi. Nice meeting you too, Abhi, said Vinny. Then she told Gautam, Gautam, I only came to wish the two of you. I need to get back home. It's a long drive, you know. But Vinny, at least a drink? I have to refuse, Gautam. Abhi, I'm so sorry, but I need to leave. How did you come here? Asked Gautam. I came by cab. I guess I'll take a cab back. Vinita, you won't get a cab at this time of the night. I'll ask my driver to drop you. And so the two of them had walked out. Gautam looked at Vinny and said, Vinny, is there someone in your life? Yes, Gautam. Are you happy? Very. And I'm very happy too, Gautam, for you and Abhi. Have a good life. I'm so grateful you came, Vinny. I'm happy for you, Gautam. And just then the car arrived. She got into the car, waved at him, and the car started off. Then she leant back on the seat and thought, so many different shades of love. She had been loved by so many people. Her mother, her father, the kind of love that showered on her. Then, of course, Usha. So much love from a friend. And Gautam, she was very sure in those 3 years they had spent together, he had loved her. Perhaps not in the way she had wanted. And then the puppy. And then now little Ita, her lovely little daughter. And Gautam and Abhi, that was also a shade of love, wasn't it? So many different shades of love. With a smile, she settled back and waited to reach home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Very beautifully told. Anybody? Thoughts, comments? Beverly, you got to turn your mic on. You're on mute.
I'm going to have to leave soon. I have to go to the orthopedics, but your story was so heartwarming, you know, and everyone loves puppies too, as well as children. And it, you know, it just, you constantly kept me wanting more of the story. You totally involved me. It was terrific. Thank you, Renu.
Thank you, Bev, and see you soon. Bye.
Yep, see you soon. I'll be leaving in a few minutes. I want to stay as long as I can.
Oh, okay. I thought you were in a
Okay.
hurry to leave.
And I put my information in for anybody who needs it in the chat.
Yeah, sure.
So this was a story that you created, Renu.
Yes, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Renu, this is Lalita here. I really loved your story, and from your story, you've captured all aspects like your love for nature, your love for animals, your love for little children, especially disadvantaged children. And it was very beautifully narrated, Neville. Thank you so much. It was very nice. And the best part is you covered every aspect, even in the finally in the end, the LGBT. I mean, it's like, you know, the love is common in everywhere. That's what you touched at. So that was very nice, very well narrated. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. That was the idea, actually. I wanted to cover the LGBTQ part of it because my
And this happens to be the LGBTQ month also.
Yes.
So it is very inclusive, and especially your love for nature showed the garden and the dog. So generally you bring in these things in all your stories. So it's very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think also I want to convey a whole lot of messages.
Yeah, it came in your story naturally. Like as the story came across, it really came naturally. Even when they don't want to have a child or when they are terminating it, I mean, it all came in the flow.
Yeah. So it's perfectly all right not to want children. It's a nice thing that the man is enabled, that he's able to do all the work around the house. So I think these are the things that I really wanted to bring across, and that's why I created the story all in my head. I generally don't write stories down. So I keep changing every time I tell it. So
in one story you got about a lot of aspects, so that was nice.
I hope I didn't overshoot time, Eric.
It's okay.
Because I didn't want to go like a super speed express, you know, that's what I normally do. I just tend to go very fast, keeping the time in mind. So I wanted to go a bit slow this time.
It's fine.
But any comments from you, Eric?
It was so realistic. It's hard to believe that it's an imaginary story.
But did I narrate it well?
Of course, and very naturally.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Renu, I really love the story. I know in India, culturally, we are still not very open to any relationship beyond the male and female relationship. And I think it's really a brave story that stories like this will probably have to be told again and again and again until people understand and people realize that, you know, it's not only one kind of love that is, and I think that's a really powerful message, and it has come through quite well, and the storytelling was realistic. I loved it. I mean, I'm raising my children hopefully in a way that, you know, they understand this right from the day they're 5 years old now, but I want them to grow up thinking that, you know, it's okay to be different, and it's okay to be, you know, there's nothing wrong in any other kind of love.
Yes.
So I think these stories need to be told. I think it's a fantastic story.
Definitely, thank you.
You know, for those of us who are heterosexual, it can be a bit of a shock when people are not heterosexual, but we just have to get over it.
Yeah, I think my daughters have more or less sensitized me, because I come from a generation where only heterosexual relationships existed.
Mhm.
But I think both my daughters are very genned up in all these, you know, everybody is equal and everybody needs to be treated the same way kind of a thing. So I actually ran my story through my daughter and she said yes, but I initially the title was Different Kinds of Love. She said, no, that doesn't sound nice. So I made it Different Shades of Love and she said, yeah, this sounds fine.
My daughter, you know, Magdalene and I have a daughter who's 13, and she's already an activist. She will, you know, talk, and on the internet, she will explain about how there are different types of love. She, you know, I think she said she herself is heterosexual, but she wants to be an activist to help, you know, everybody. Okay. Any other thoughts?
I think beautifully told. I could see the whole story. I mean, she took us through the journey of her life. I mean, Vinita's life, which is really beautiful.
Thank you, Barnali.
Okay. And